Mr. Baker, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit here and talk to me a little bit about affordable housing in Walton County, and specifically a project that's going on here in Defuniak Springs. But before we get into sort of how the HUD operates here in Walton County, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and how'd you get here?
I'm originally from Auburn, Opelika, Alabama area, and went to school there at Auburn, and served after completing Auburn in field of criminal justice. I worked for the Southern Company with Alabama Power, then Mississippi, and then Gulf Power for 28 years. I'm also was a member of the Alabama National Guard and retired with the National Guard with 20-something years service with them. Became Director of Housing for Walton County in 2006, and that's my present position here with Walton County Housing Agency.
How did you get turned on to housing in Walton County after your retirement? What prompted you to get back into work as a housing director?
I had, during the process of working with the Southern Company, I had been involved in the ownership of some rental properties, the building of some spec homes and that type of thing. I had, when I moved and retired and I moved to Walton County, this job became available and I applied for it. It was a really neat thing to be able to land a job like this in Walton County. It's been a learning experience. I had a little knowledge of HUD and its interaction with the Section 8 Home Choice Voucher Program. But we've stayed up on that, and it's a learning process every day. And I've really enjoyed it. It's been a really good experience.
What is the mission of HUD in Walton County?
Well, there's a number of and that's a very good question, because there's a number of different HUD operations in Walton County. Some HUD operations are associated with people buying new homes, the home ownership issues. There's also what's known as public housing, where HUD actually owns what they might call a project, select families to live in those homes. But the Home Choice Voucher Program that we're over is a grant from HUD, unique idea of renting homes from private individuals and then working a contract to place a family that's in need in that home and assisting with paying a portion of the rent for that family. It has a number of reasons behind that. Is that they want the people who are low income to mix with the community and be a part of the community. That's worked real well in the past, but recently the homes that we are trying to rent are going away. They're older homes, they're mobile homes. Some of our homes are 50 years old. That is creating an issue in that those homes, the owners are selling them, getting out of the rental business or whatever. So we have a large shortage of homes in our area at this time, and not many being built at all that would fit the criteria of a rental property for a low-income family.
Affordable housing is almost a buzzword around Walton County right now. There was recently a rezoning request for 68 acres in South Walton on Highway 98.
Right.
And a component of that rezoning deal was that some of that property was going to be made in terms of affordable housing. But when you kind of uncover the details, you realize that affordable housing in that situation may be a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment that's going for $1,800 a month. That doesn't sound very affordable to me. I know it's different than what you guys do. What is the definition of affordable housing with respect to how HUD views affordable housing?
Well, it really has to do with a family that might be paying up to 30% of their income toward housing. And let me say this, the latest figures that I've seen is that many of the families in Walton County are paying up to and over 50% of their income. And to give you a definition of affordable housing, and some people want to change this to attainable housing, and they can come up with buzzwords and whatever, but it's still the ability to afford what is available on the market. So this is a changing and moving target. Every day that we walk in here, the rents are increasing. Yesterday I heard a good rule of thumb was a rental unit in Walton County is going for $1 per square foot. That's basically what you can count on at this time. So you're talking $1,000 a month for a 1,000 square foot home, okay? That is really tough for a working family when you're looking at let's say the 2 people make $15 an hour and they're working, you're talking somewhere in the $35,000 to $40,000 a year range. But when they walk into a home and they want $1,200 to $1,500 a month rent, that really impacts their ability to have the home. And let me be honest with you, people are requiring more for deposits. Of course, transportation costs and all other issues are coming into play too. So the affordability, the first time you as a young person tries to find an apartment, you use the affordability rule to find out what I can afford. Even when you are out of college and have landed a job or whatever, that home still is something you have to find if you can afford. And even to the point when you retire, you may then have to find what home is affordable with retirement pays. So the use of affordability is what you have to determine when you're searching for a shelter. When you apply for any grants, and when you're talking with Florida Housing Corporation, you have to deal with them on the terms of affordable housing, because that is the term that they use. If you want to get a grant or whatever, it's associated with affordable housing. So that's why this thing in South Walton has taken on some affordability terminology, is the fact that it is a little bit more affordable than some of the complexes that are being built in the South. Today we're here to discuss a project in Defuniak Springs, the Village Springs project, which is truly an affordable issue.
Village Springs.
I think, yeah, I think that's
and it's in Defuniak Springs.
It's in
right down
Defuniak
the road,
Springs, yeah.
Village Springs.
This was a project that was initiated back in 2018.
Okay.
And Florida Housing Corporation and our local bank was associated with that, and a developer out of South Florida. And I don't want to get into a whole lot of details because I don't know all the details about why the situations have occurred like they have. And to finish my statement on that is the fact that it was truly to be one that HUD could utilize to put low-income families in, okay?
What was the initial vision? How many units? How big is the property?
Yeah, I'm going to say the property is probably about 10 acres, but I may be a little wrong on that. But basically, there's 25 duplexes. It wound up being 50 homes to put families in. Some 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units spread out through that unit. We absolutely could fill that thing up in a day if we had them. I mean, and this, we've been counting. In fact, over 2 years ago, we began to hand out applications for families that wanted to move into the thing. And it just began the development began to falter to some degree. And so none of that worked out. But we really were interested and have been talking to, I think it's called Workforce Ventures, Housing Ventures is the developer on this thing. We've been talking with them for a number of years about placing families in those homes there.
Why has it stalled out to this point in time? I mean, is there not an investor who could come along and make good on the deal? This
is a very complex issue because I've written letters to Florida Housing. I've communicated very frequently with the developer, the executive director for the developer, and also to the banking institution here that's associated with this development also. They're trying to determine, there were issues that affected it, such as labor issues, cost of material issues. There's been issues with the ground under these facilities, which is located on the side of a hill, that have washed and caused some issues. And so the groundwater issues became important. And finally, if it's my understanding, the city of Defuniak put a stop order on the development. And it has been that way for some time, if it's been lifted or not. But I go by it almost daily. There's no construction at all taking place. And I've shown you some photographs of wash conditions on the hillside there. My main concern is that this thing may not be viable for the future. And it's funded in some degree by taxpayer money. I'm just asking for maybe some accountability or whatever. What happened here? Because we're in dire need of this. This is not something, if it goes away, we can get over in any length of time, because I can tell you that I know of no other project like this that's on the books for Walton County.
And that's the biggest problem with issuing vouchers, is the supply of housing. How many vouchers do we have in the county?
We currently have 399 vouchers assigned to us from HUD. Okay. In July of this year, we were able to house 283 families. So a number of these vouchers were not used. Now, HUD is very concerned about that. They're concerned we have not been classified as a troubled agency, but they're putting money into our program and we're not spending it. Okay. And this is not just associated with Walton County. This is a statewide and national issue right here, because if I could house these people and begin to make payments tomorrow, on if the houses existed. But the people who we've been doing business with in the past have decided to either sell the homes because now they can make more on that home in one day than they can make in 5 years on rents. And they also needing repair, which the cost of repair has really gone up. And it's just time for people to make a change and get out of the rental business. So we begin to lose homes. Now, my agency is fueled by the fact that HUD will pay me something like $60 for every unit that I put on the program to administer this program, my salaries and benefits and whatever. I'm a county employee, but HUD pays for that. They pay them $60 per unit. As my units drop to $283, the cost to sustain my being here goes down. And in fact, we have open position we can't fill. Our agency is really on a fine edge of being in existence because we have to pay our way. The county is not the other thing, this place that I work here, my salaries and benefits are paid by the federal government, HUD.
Are the same 280 vouchers still out there on the street being used today?
Well, let me tell you where they are. They're sitting in our office. The 283 are being used, but the ones that aren't being used, that money, they will pay us they don't continue to pay me the money that I'm not using. It's just being withheld from us at this time.
But 283 vouchers are out there.
They're out there right now.
What happens to those 283 if you said there may be a risk that the HUD department here is a jeopardy of being in existence? What happens to those 283 vouchers?
Well, HUD doesn't know exactly what they will do in the future, but we're hoping that we find a solution to this, okay? The potential is, of course, that they can consolidate our operation somewhere else with another housing agency, a larger agency or whatever. The issue that we have, and not to get too complex in this, is that we own no property. In other words, if we own property, then our funding and all would change a good bit. We would have assets, but we don't. We deal with strictly paying for landlords, and those landlords are diminishing. So we have an issue, and HUD has recently given us the opportunity to provide some benefit to landlords if they will put a home on our program. And we'll be approaching the board soon to get that approved. And hopefully that'll bring about some additional housing. In fact, I want to be positive and say that in the last month, we've picked 2 or 3 homes up. And that's a really good sign. Now, let me tell you what's going on as far as the demand. We have 43 families that we've issued a voucher to that are looking for a home. They have a voucher that my agency will begin paying rents if they find a home. They have to search for them themselves.
Is that part of the 283 or?
No, that's out here trying to fill that gap between 283 and 399.
Got it.
Okay, so they will look and they'll have 4 months to look with that voucher for a home. After 4 months, that voucher that we've issued will expire and they'll go away. And behind them, we have 185 families that we call the waiting list. And about every month or so, we call another group up so that these things start to overlap. I think the sad part of this is the fact that right now, our success rate on someone that we issue a voucher to is about 12%. In other words, about 12% of the people we issue a voucher to can actually find something. And we have some turnover, which allows for that 12%. We have people who move or report to another city or whatever. That's how that continuously moves. But recently, and I want to be optimistic about that, we picked up 2 or 3 homes. One of the great things about a landlord out here, and I'm going to plug this, is the fact that when you deal with us, your money is in the bank at 12:01 a.m. on the first day of the month. And that's a selling point to us. And we're reputable about paying bills.
Fast pay makes good friends.
Yes. And we make sure of that. We make sure our landlords don't have a blip in what we are doing for them, you know.
What does the average family look like that's receiving a voucher from HUD, or a typical family?
Usually see a woman with 2 to 3 kids, and that's who walks in my office almost on a daily basis. If we see a man come in here, and they're usually associated with a disability or whatever, but usually there's not a family as a whole with a man and woman and kids that come into operation. And this the heartstrings are pulled every time because we want to help in any way we can, you know. But we find it, and it's so difficult because when you're looking for a home, you still got deposits that you got to come up with. And they're pretty expensive. When you start asking for first month and last month's rent deposits that we don't pay, that family has to come up with that. And by the grace of God, the churches and other organizations are trying to help pick up some of those expenses for deposits, because it is pretty expensive. You take a home that's $1,000 and you got to come up with $2,000 deposits, and pretty rough.
What are the requirements income-wise to qualify for support from HUD?
Well, that's kind of a moving target in itself also, in that you have as your income increases, and you have to keep us up to date on your income. As it increases, then we pay a little less rent. Mm-hmm. And this is a fallacy of the program to some degree, because when a family goes out and lands a job, they have 10 days to tell us that they've done that. And we just a month out to pay less of their rent. Mm-hmm. So we've really impacted them now having some wages in the family. Right. And so you'll find that a family may make a decision that I'm doing okay like this, and if I go get a job, this is going to my benefits. I really had a situation a while back where the person became that was on my program became involved with what we call a family self-sufficiency program, in that we asked them to do certain things, and that is to get some training and get a job, land a job, increase their income, and we put some money back during that time. Instead of taking money away from them, we put some in an escrow that we can pay out, and they can make a down payment on a house or whatever. We have like 25 families that are doing that. Well, when that person reached a level of about $35,000 a year to $38,000 a year, she became eligible to come off of our program. We would pay just a small amount of her rent, and she'd pay more. And so basically, when she reached that point, most of her benefits went away, from food stamps to whatever. And when she came in and said, this is not working, I can't go back and lose all these benefits and pay my rents too.
So if she's making $28,000 a year, she gets big benefits.
Yeah.
If she makes $38,000 a year, she loses.
She loses a good bit of her rent.
This person's kind of incentivized to stay under the radar.
Well, it actually makes good business sense to do that. And I hate to say it like that, because I really saw where the rubber meets the road. That why when people, if they would get out and go to work, well, sometimes when they get out and go to work, they're impacted and pushed back into another decision that they have to make. I don't make those rules. That's just kind of what we have to live with, you know. But I want to tell you that there are many people that are on our program that really need this. You know, I hear everything from, you know, I did it, they can do it, whatever. But times are tough right now with anyone entering the market. My heart goes out. I work with a Boys and Girls Club, and I'm in the Kiwanis Club, and I love these kids of the community, because I get to see them walk in here and fist bump me and whatever. You know,
you meet all these people.
They come through here, you know, and I know what these seniors in high school are facing the day they walk out. On June the 5th of every year, we probably have, I don't know how many seniors in Walton County, 200, but they walk out into an environment where there are no apartments to rent. Right. Any apartment they rent doesn't fit any income that they can start off with, and they absorb back into their family to some degree, and it impacts the whole neighborhood. When that happens, that's not productive. I think that it impacts the quality of life in our communities. I really do.
How many vouchers would be available to Walton County if supply wasn't the issue? If there were 10,000 homes out there on the market, how many vouchers could Walton County?
Well, until we applied for another grant, the $399 would be the total. I mean, because there's just been no push for that, been coming down for some time.
How many families in Walton County would qualify for vouchers if?
Oh my goodness. I communicate with Jeff and them with emergency management, and I said, you know, let's be conscious of something. That a storm were to hit, I don't think we know how many people will need a shelter here, because we've got multiple families living in one home now, and it's hard to put your hand around how many people really are here. I think that is something to be really concerned about. One thing, I'm not cautious in saying this because it's a true fact, we have an influx of immigrants that are landing here in our community, and they are absorbing some of the homes that we used to have on the program. That's where some of these homes have gone. And I see the house when I actually visit all of my homes. Because of our financial situation, I'm having to do the home inspections. And COVID had us out of that business for a little bit, but we're back into it now. And I see the home that I used to have, and those are a different group of people there. And my landlords are making a little more money with that. And let's talk about that briefly, and the fact that HUD has allowed my agency to cope with the situation. We're so blessed to live in Walton County. And on one side of this, the market values have increased because, I mean, we are in an affluent county. But we have people who are beginning in the workforce and whatever that are they are actually the fire and the boiler for our 5-star community and restaurants and motels and whatever that really can't afford to live here. They really can't do this. And so about 40% of the people that are on my program are employed, but they can't still pay the rents. They have assistance to live in this environment. That HUD has given us the ability to find more homes. by saying that they set a fair market rent annually. And that is what they say that HUD can pay for a rental unit in Walton County. This year, they've allowed the Walton County Housing Agency to go to 120% of what the fair market value is.
That was the contingency on that deal that I mentioned about the rezoning. The affordability level they allowed the developer to plan for is 120% of the median. I may be getting this a little wrong, but it's 120% of the median in income for the county, which again does not seem to me to be quote unquote affordable for the situations that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And see, at 120%, we still aren't competing with the rents in our county. Mm-hmm. I have a very few homes in Freeport, and they're a mobile home because we can't afford anything down there. My 3-bedroom home right now, if it was a brand new unit with all the upgrades in that unit, I probably could pay the landlord. I could look at a rent of about $1,100 or $1,200 a month. Rents for 3 bedrooms in South Walton, if you saw the numbers with this development that some people put together in South Walton, you're talking $2,500 for a 3-bedroom apartment down there.
At least.
Yeah. Let me be honest with you. My landlords, I appreciate them so much because they're loyal to what we're trying to do. So I actually have people call wanting to get involved with us just because they want to do something about this issue.
Right.
So it's a good-hearted thing to be involved in, you know. And we counsel with our tenants constantly, even in our newsletters that we send out. Take care of your property. Don't create the landlord issues when you have knock a hole in the wall, fix it. Don't require them to come out here and do that because under the goodness of their heart, they're allowing us to have the house you're living in, take care of the thing, you know.
Right.
Cut the grass. Live nicely in the neighborhood. Don't have police officers out there at 2 in the morning. We need the landlords to be happy, and they do. If we have an issue, we get right in the middle of it and say, listen to me, you need to do better than this, you know.
It seems like such a difficult problem because you've got tremendous land value, tremendous property value. You've got a huge demand for housing, a small supply. You've got an agency who's got money to incentivize developers and landlords to bring property to the market, but it's not quite enough to compete with the mm-hmm. fair market. So mm-hmm. what do we really do? Go back to HUD and ask for more money to pay landlords more? Is that even an option to increase the amount of money that mm-hmm. could be incentivized to landlords? Or here's something that I was thinking about on the way here. Has a study been conducted on what is the impact, the negative impact of the housing shortage with respect to labor, with respect to people not being able to find a place to live if they want to come here and work? Is there a way to quantify, what that really cost us so that we could sort of, look at the balance sheet and say, okay, well, the county's losing X millions of dollars a year because we don't have enough housing for servers and teachers and firefighters and police officers and dental hygienists and all the people that are super important to make a community thrive. Mm-hmm. What is the impact to Walton County that we're not subsidizing that sort of housing? Does it make sense for the county to come up with additional funds, to help solve this problem? Yeah,
and that's a really good question. I don't know that those numbers have been pulled together, but when you talk to Russell Hughes with the school board, mm-hmm. he says, Tom, I'm losing teachers because they want to come here to work. They'll take the job and find that they can't find a home here.
Right.
And talking to Bill Infeld with the Economic Development Alliance, is that when he talks to companies that want to move here, and there are some that are trying to move here, and they want to bring 25 to 30 employees with them, that's one of the issues they have is where we're going to put the people I'm bringing with me. Even with the county, I was talking to Holly Hope with the health department and saying that they offer jobs that the people want to be here, but they can't find a place to live. One of the companies here associated with Chelco have similar issue, with employees that we're looking at new jobs there, and that's creating a problem for them. You asked a good question. What is the solution to this? In other words, who's got the game plan on what we're going to do about this?
Well, we believe in capitalism, right? So resources follow profits. Mm-hmm. There typically has to be a profit motive in order to get the natural capitalism engine running. But I don't see a profit potential here, which we got to fix that if we're going to live in the environment of capitalism. Or you got to tell the government to pony up and make the payment, which nobody wants to hear that, right? Because then they start talking about, well, this is freeloading and you're giving people a handout and they stay on it forever. But what is the impact? I mean, nobody, I think, likes the idea of giving away something for free. But, what is the impact? And that goes back to my question on the study of what is the impact to Walton County by not having the housing that people who want to come here and contribute, in a positive way to the community need in order to live here. I would like to think that the leadership in the county could pull that together and quantify it in a very mathematical way. What is Walton County leaving on the table by not jumping in and saying, we're going to solve this problem some kind of way? If it takes 100 years, we're going to build enough housing and we're going to, go for bonds or whatever. Smarter people than me can figure it out. But
and I think maybe the Chamber of Commerce maybe could look at some of that and talk with people who are in the business of bringing people to our community. Today, in talking to Billy Bearden, who is the building inspector for the county, we issued, I think he told me today, 160 something permits for new homes in Walton County last month.
Wow.
Okay, you're building homes, but you cannot afford to build what I need. Okay. In other words, this has become a mathematical issue at this point. When you look at the fact, if it's $180 a square foot and you're building a 3-bedroom, 1,000 square foot home, you're talking $180,000. The person who invests in that can't make the more getting $1,000 a month out of it. Because so when you're talking, and I talk to developers that this has happened to, when they talk to their money people, they say, go to Freeport, build $300,000 houses and make me and you both money, because you can't afford to get involved in this market up there. Okay, so that's why there's no developments planned. It's because it's just not frugal to try to find. The labor costs have gone up, the material costs have gone up, the land costs have gone up. The numbers don't work anymore.
Well, philosophically, is that what we depend on government to do, is to come together and make a push towards things that don't have an obvious profit motive, or where the profit motive may be on a horizon of 100 years. If I can go and invest, $200 and see a return in a week, well, that seems to figure itself out. But if the solution requires a long-term strategy that, you have to wait out in order to realize, then, is that government's role to step in?
I think it has been. I want you to take a step back and think about, I expense over $2 million a year here in Walton County on a fledgling program, which they call a small program. And that's $2 million. Think about Miami, St. Louis, New Orleans, Daytona, New York, Chicago. They have put money into this, billions. I saw the HUD budget's, $60 billion? I mean, it's not something they haven't addressed, okay? And they have the money out there. But this is a nationwide issue when you say that. Now, let's look at something, and I don't think I'm talking out of school here, because I communicate real frequently with the county commissioners, okay? They ask me, Tom, what do we do? Okay, the question you have, should we be more involved in this? How do we get more involved in this? How do we make the right steps and not get in trouble doing this? In other words, HUD's got somewhere in the neighborhood, billions of dollars of properties that they own that are not habitable because they're run down and torn up. I think a number I heard in Miami-Dade, so many apartments that are vacant that would cost $20,000 to bring them to a stage that they could occupy those things again. The county commissioners are trying to make a good decision, a good business decision. How deep do we want to wade into getting into the housing business? You brought up a good point. Where the demand is in America, there should be some supplier wanting to take advantage of that demand. When they look at it, they find out that my numbers don't work and I've got to do it a little different way. I don't want to mention any names, but I've had people come from Atlanta, Daytona, and a number of places that sat right where you are and said, for instance, my church says, come and help the poor. Tell me why this works and how we make this work. And when we get through talking, I kind of have landed them with a proposition that I'm not going to be able to do this because I can't go back and sell this. And I hate that happens. I hate that happens, Now, one of the alternatives is, in the future, can we find a way to mass produce housing at a cheaper cost, a level to where the energy costs are reasonable? And there's just been a deal here in Walton County, and I don't want to mention any names or whatever, but they're going to erect a company out at the Mossy Head Industrial Park, and they're going to be looking at this new construction out of Italy that is going to be concrete type deals, which is energy efficient, and they're going to begin to make these homes in Walton County. Make them and sell them in Walton County. It's a different looking home, but they're being used in the Caribbean and in a lot of different places. And it is the home of the future, whether you like the way it looks or whatever.
Well, that's what gets me excited, is to see things being tried. Even if I don't necessarily agree with it, progress is exciting. And I can sit back and I can look and see, how is this working out? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And then I can make decisions based on what I see. But what I don't like to see, and I think a lot of people feel this way, is gridlock, is just people getting around talking about things and nothing ever happening. I would rather have someone disagree with me, but run full speed at a solution that they believe in, than us just sit there and argue with one another and no one try anything. That's great. I love the idea that some new company is going to come in here and try some innovation.
I think you got like a $10 million investment here already.
Good for them.
Yeah. And the thing, please understand this, and trying to be as politically correct as I can, affordable housing is not a very popular thing to be involved in.
Yeah.
It is not a political thing that you really want to discuss a lot, because there's not a lot of good answers to it at this point. Communities may not want you to do what they did in South Walton and that community, which causes a lot of friction with the commissioners approving such a venture like that. So what I'm saying is, once a meeting is held by the public that we plan to do something like this, then there's a lot of pushback associated with, don't do that in my backyard. And I understand that. Property values may be affected and whatever.
I think that's another difficult question that we really have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves. Do we want to provide a solution for affordable housing to people who are in an income bracket that need it? Do we want to do that? If you say yes, well then, let's come up with a solution. Let's try something. I don't think anyone's going to say no, because that doesn't sound very good either.
They want a good solution to this brought to them. They don't want a problem brought to the commissioners. They want an answer as to how we do this and it work. And listen, it's not whether we want to do this or not. For us to continue to operate 5-star restaurants and people driving from Atlanta and New Orleans and whatever for a dinner that takes a 3-hour wait and the crew didn't show up or whatever, we're actually seeing restaurant owners that may be buying homes for their employees. You got to go back in history and look. This is not the first time this occurred. I grew up, as I said, in Auburn, Opelika, Alabama, where Pepperell Mill was a cotton mill there, and that they paid very low wages to families, to work there. So they had to develop mill villages. My sister still owns a home in a historical mill village there in Opelika, Alabama. You live in the company house. You walk to work, you walk to the grocery store, to the infirmary, to the school and the post office, and you come to work 3 shifts a day. Are we looking at developing something on the neighborhood, and where do you do this, as a village where our worker group lives, and you transport them and whatever, and provide them with medical and whatever in that area?
Has that sort of idea been tossed around?
We've talked about it many times, but the idea is, where do you do this? How do you get someone in other words, I'm going to go back and say what I said, where even though the demand is here, the people to satisfy that demand are not making enough off of it to come and provide that for that demand. Now, if you don't come up with a way to do that, it's not going to help our seniors in high school to go to Atlanta and find a job, because the rent's going to double. That's not an answer for them. But as long as there is nothing here for them, they're going to take a job and mill around and need family support and whatever, and it's going to impact the quality of life in our neighborhood. So we really need to be innovative enough to find out, how do we look for the future of this? And one of the things, and I've talked to developers that are looking at this, is how do we build a house in the future that houses 3 families? We need a footprint of 2,000 square foot where we put 3 families in. I don't know how that'll work in the future. One of the ideas that a guy drew out for me was something like a Hampton Inn type idea, where you have a family, and a central cooking and television area and bath areas. I'm not saying I would recommend that, because I think you're going to have issues with personalities and whatever that come into play.
I think you got to have a lot of quivers, a lot of arrows in the quiver. Probably not one way to do it, but I think of like a business incubator. A new business comes online and they go down to the chamber and they rent a little spot, and it's not forever, but it's a way for them to get started. And, if you had a housing project that was that way, but that people, they were working to get past that phase of their life, I think that would be great. People come in all shapes and sizes, they need different things at different times in their life. And so I think the solution should look that way too.
I think that the solution, and too, a very negative figure that just came out with, there's a group out of Washington that's saying less than 50% of the people in America will now ever own a home.
That is scary.
That's reached a point that's never been before. Because, I mean, you don't have that American dream of a home on the corner and cutting the grass on Friday afternoon and whatever. I drove through a subdivision south of Freeport the other day, and those homes are packed in there. It's a different living style that I don't know that I like to live in that, but you know, those 300,000 a copy. You know, I mean, that's where we're going. I mean, you got to put what you can on a small acreage or whatever. But I think, again, the idea of what do we do and how do we do it, and how do we please the public, but also we're going to have to find a way to meet this demand in some way. I mean, we're going to have to, because the people, we will have another graduating class in the next 9 or 10 months. I mean, it's not going away. And not only that, I think Superintendent Hughes said from about January to June, we had 800 new students in our school system that may be coming from another area. What we're producing here is like I said, an incubator that we got to find somewhere to land.
Well, you know, I grew up as a conservative. You know, I've always been told, you know, the government doesn't handle money well and that taxes are bad and all these things. But at some point in time, someone has to participate in the solution when there's not an obvious profit motive. And I think government has got to be that entity. Government's got to be part of the solution to solve this problem. And HUD is, but the local county government. This is a very rich county. And
it's very affluent and very, very fortunate to be so.
It frustrates me, and I know it frustrates a lot of people, that we have these kind of issues in a county with so much resource and asset to it.
We have to find a way to bring this housing issue to a level of importance for the county too. And I'm not saying it hasn't been, but when have we had a special meeting to address? I've talked about it a good bit, and I'm not sure it's my place to do this, but to develop, like some communities, a task force for affordable housing where you go and you get in a room and you come up with a 5-year plan. We don't have one of those. It's what we actually do in the next 5 years to address this issue. We do that with our schools. We know what our demand may be. We do it with our fire departments, our sheriff's department. We know what that demand has to be, and we provide for that. It's a little bit like when we made a decision that we're going to have to bus the kids to school because nobody's going to be able to get all the kids in here if we don't put buses out on the road. So we got in the busing business. Now, are we going to have to get in the housing business in order for us to have a stable community? And let me say this, I mean, I'm concerned about the crime rates and all raising and whatever, not to say, but homelessness breeds that type thing. It really does, and you can look at it any way you want to, but it does do that. When you don't have when your kids are going to different homes and living with different people and whatever, it's not a successful.
Well, you know, or we could just pay the teachers $150,000 a year. You know, we could just raise everyone's salary.
You know, well, you're going to pay $12, $15 for a hamburger, but
I paid $20 for one.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
I mean, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but you know, it's going to get you one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know, you're either not going to have the community that you want, or you know, you're going to pay for it through wages or government subsidies. But what you don't want is people running around homeless, obviously, and you don't want people avoiding being able to move here when we have such a great area because there's nowhere to live.
Yeah.
And
two, you know, please be aware of this. Again, talking to Jeff and them with emergency management, just pray that we spare the storm. Because a loss of 20% of our housing market would be devastating to us. It would be, because I mean, look at Panama City. That's been, what, 3 to 4 years out now? And I'm serious. I try not to think about that because, I mean, I don't know how we would handle that. And I know that the government would have to step in and get involved in that. But on a good sunny day, you know, I really would like to see a good workable plan developed as to what we look at. And let me throw something at you. And I read up on the Pinellas County, they developed a 1-cent sales tax. I think, pennies for Pinellas. If you look that up, pennies for, and it goes strictly for affordable housing and infrastructure. 78% of the people in that county voted for that sales tax. and it works. And they're building high-rise multifamily units and whatever because they had to. I mean, those people are just living on top of each other there. And other ideas are the county does own some land here. In fact, one area that I know of is about 140 acres of land. The problem is the infrastructure for water and sewer doesn't allow for you to have septic systems to handle the multifamily development like that. But if that was developed, we got to make decisions on how we pay for that so that developments can come, because that's an added cost to the horizontal. I mean, it just got to have it in place. Now, one of the areas that we need to look at, and I think we will be, is to take the land that we own and that we find a way to entice developers to come in and build homes on that, but not charge them for that land. It would be like a community land trust where the mortgage wouldn't include the property, but they would pay some little bit back over a period of 10 years or 20 years or whatever against the land, but they would have a less of a mortgage, which would bring down their payments, you know. So
I think it's interesting in your perspective that there hasn't been this sort of, 30,000 foot view planning that's taken place. I would have guessed that there were an affordable housing plan, that we were a roadmap that we were following. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is there's really not a cohesive idea, plan.
I don't know of one, and I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but Matt Carpenter and them with the planning department have made some stuff. There's a plan, it's called the LHEP, the local housing plan. The state requires this in order to get the SHIP and sale programs in the county, where they have made a lot of earmarks. It says if you come in with an affordable housing project, we will allow you to do certain things and give you speedy turnaround and whatever. Those type things are occurring. And then I heard the other day, over a period of time, only one person had walked in wanting to do that. And because the other mathematical issues keep them from wanting to. I talked with a gentleman last week that said, I'm elderly, I own a lot of land, I'm going to sell the timber on it, and I want to build some homes for the poor. And when we got to talking about that, he says, if I build a 3-bedroom home, what can you do? And I told him maybe $1,100, $1,200. And he says, I can't pay for this, for that. And so he says, I really want to do this, and I'm going to really research it. But when you look at building in Freeport, and another person told me this week, that they tried to buy a mobile home and put it there. It's an $8,000, $8,000 hookup fee for sewer. And it hurts. And I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm just saying that weighs into people getting involved in it,
Right. There's a lot of costs that go into the project before you can even begin to go vertical on any improvements. But, well, Mr. Baker, I appreciate your time. And I just want to say, I think Walton County is really lucky to have a guy like you in this position, because you obviously are excited and passionate about what you're doing. And, I would just like to help, anyway.
Well, and I thank you, Bo, because you've talked with me a couple of times. But I want to finish this by saying that one of the reasons we're here today is this Village Spring project. Yes. Because it hurts my heart to know that we may lose 50 units here. I mean, because I don't know how we recover from that. I mean, we don't need that to go away.
We got to figure out a way to bring those 50 units online and make them available to the people who qualify for these vouchers.
Yeah. See, what's the beauty of this? That it's already been approved, and the community has had its involvement, and it's there. The footprint is there. So I have asked, and with Florida Housing, with the developer, and even with the city, let's all get in a room and figure out what we do next. And I mean, because I know none of us want this to go away. We haven't met yet, but I hope that that'll come about, because I'm not a player in this other than I'm the demand, okay? Right. So I don't have, I'm just telling you to please come and help me, Right. But I think I have a responsibility as housing director to say, this facility does not need to wash into the creek. Please, for the least of us. Because, I mean, there's a lot of people that do basically what I do with the Matrix and the other organizations in our community that help on a daily basis people that are living in their cars and whatever. And just ask the question, how many people are living in motels, families? And I know at one time I asked that and there were 11. I don't know what that constant figure is, but we do have a number that are walking the streets every day looking. We have people applying for our program from Michigan. I mean, they want to come here because this is where they want to live. And we tell them when they apply, we'll issue you a voucher. We do have a priority, though, that we try to issue vouchers to the people who live and work here before we get to someone from Michigan. But we tell them, I just want to tell you, it's very difficult to find a home here. So don't spend a month's salary trying to get down here to look for something that you probably won't be able to find, but we want to be honest with you about that. But I hope at the end of the day that we're able to pull a team together to get this Village Springs up and running. I know I have questions daily from people. Every time I go to a Kiwanis meeting, they want to know, what's the deal? You know, when's this going to come about? And then about 3 weeks ago, Commissioner Gladwell said, go walk over that, take an engineer with you. Tell me what you think about it. And my goodness, the engineer, we just shook our heads and said, no, this is going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot. Well, you take any development that's 4 years into, and you got roofs off the facilities, you got a mess. I hope that, and I've talked to people who are running for state representative and whatever about, listen, and I want you to know this, there's what they call there's a fund called the Zerkowski Fund. I got that name on the end of my tongue. But every time a property sells, there's a certain percent that goes into affordable housing fund with the state. And over the past, the state government has swept that fund to some degree especially after Hurricane Michael, to put that fund into general operations and whatever, and it hasn't come back to the counties. I think Walton County sometimes has recognized some $350,000 from it in a year's time, and it goes to different programs like Ship and Sell, which is a whole nother conversation about blighted homes and whatever. So, and God bless the opportunities of Habitat that's trying to build. We have a village here on the west side of town called Hope Village that we plan to build 2 houses in this year. And I think we've already got 2, and I think a total of 12 are going to go into that little community there. It's called Hope Village. And listen, another thing, when the mathematics don't work, the volunteers are really, there's not many people that show up for a work day for Habitat in North Walton County, because a lot of people who are working in South Walton. So the cost of Habitat building is increasing because we're having to pay for some things to be done. If you have a civic group or whatever that can have a work day or whatever, it would be great to help with Habitat in their efforts, because Habitat's a great thing.
Right. What a great volunteering opportunity.
I mean, it's a long-term thing. It's been going on. I think we're at house 60 in Walton County. House 60. We're building right here in town right now. So I'm sold on the fact that that's a and Restore. Oh my goodness, that's a great thing in South Walton, because those things that are sold at the Restore facility for Habitat will go directly in building another house. So that's our funding mechanism for the future.
Well, I hope the county or someone puts some thought into the number as to what is the real economic impact by not having the type of housing that we need to service the middle class. I mean, it's not even affordability at this point in time. Right. It's really just the middle class. I mean, had I not bought my house back in 2019, I probably couldn't afford it today, the way that prices have gone up in the last couple of years. So, it's not a low income problem.
It's not, because who was not low income yesterday?
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to say that you actually take a deputy and his wife's a school teacher. Their cost of living has increased to the point where they're shifting and where they fall into this affordability range and whatever. So they may not have needed this, but at some point, and the questions that I asked often is, when is HUD going to move this $35,000 range up to $55,000 that you can still get help?
Do you ever get an answer?
We're not getting answers yet, but they certainly got to be looking at that. It's because you're cutting off a whole group of people here that's struggling to make a living. I mean,
I'm not sure if they heard lately, but inflation is up.
I tell them that. And listen, they honestly, we are not silent about this. I'm here today talking to you, and I hope I'm not out of school in any way. But I feel like I'm 73 years old. I've been through a bunch of things, including being called up with the Army for Desert Storm at 40 years old, okay, with the E6 in the Army. That was not a pleasant thing to do. But this has been such a challenge for me. Every day I go to breakfast, and the guy says, when are you going to quit, man? And I said, listen, I'm on this merry-go-round. This thing, I can't get off of it. I can't just spend. You remember getting on the little thing and having to figure where you're going to jump? I don't want to get off of it because,
not yet, right?
Because I really would like, when you start to think about legacy, I don't want to walk away from something that, to bring a guy here and set him here and let him understand what you and I are talking about, because I've had where the rubber meets the road since 2006. That's kind of valuable, and I think it'll help us when I'm not telling you something that's not the truth. That we got to move this forward somehow. Together, we have to do this, And I, on a daily basis, try to make notes to come up with this. In fact, the other day I was walking and thought about, I haven't gone to the ministers of our community and talk to them about the housing situation. And what if I asked each church in the community to acquire a home, and I'll tell you that I'll give you, the church, back $1,100 a month to put a family in that home, and we could pick up 4 or 5 homes that way by utilizing the churches in the community.
That's a good idea.
Get them involved in this. So who else is out there that I hadn't thought about that might get involved in this type thing, you know?
Well, we got to keep brainstorming.
Yeah, because they're there.
And I hope you keep me posted on the Village Springs issue and any other, issues that come up with housing in Walton County. And I just would like to keep having the conversation.
You got it. I'll wear you out.
I like it. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
You got it, brother.
Appreciate it.
Have a good day, okay?
You too. Thank you.
Yes, sir.